Thank you. We start in a couple of minutes. Very good. So now
society. Life began in the ocean, and life cannot exist without it. This great salty mass that unites us contains the largest ecosystem of our planet and also shapes our fascinating landscape. It regulates the weather and climate of our planet. It provides us with oxygen, fresh water, and food. Human beings depend on the ocean for survival. Blue economy industries, such as tourism, aquaculture, fisheries, and maritime transport, provide livelihoods for more than 3 billion people. Today, our activities are threatening ocean health and are putting an enormous pressure on its ecosystems and services so fundamental to our well-being. Climate change impacts, marine pollution, and overfishing are causing unprecedented changes that could irreversibly jeopardize our environmental well-being and economic vitality. Despite the importance of the ocean for life on Earth and its crucial role in sustainable development, there are still major gaps in our scientific knowledge.
In EuroSea, we bring focus on the importance of ocean knowledge and the science and data that underpins it. We want to develop an improved and integrated ocean observing and forecasting system across Europe and beyond. This will help us to make better decisions for the sustainable use of the ocean and to meet the challenges of the 2030 agenda.
At EuroSea, we aim to make ocean data more accurate and accessible to all, from citizens to industry and policymakers.
We concentrate on the conservation and protection of coastal and marine habitats and the impacts of climate change. In addition, we propose tools for the prediction of extreme coastal events. This will give public authorities and industry, for example, early warnings of marine heat waves that threaten marine life.
At EuroSea, we promote the connection between citizens, the scientific community, and the public and private companies that need ocean observing and forecasting to support their work.
Through dialogue and coordinated efforts, we engage with many ocean stakeholders to identify the needs of each sector. In EuroSea, we want to ensure that ocean science and knowledge respond to the requirements of the planet, its people, and their welfare.
EuroSea strengthens the European component of the global ocean observing and forecasting system. Long-term sustained ocean observation must be a public utility to allow us to develop a sustainable blue economy. Accelerating towards science-based governance and sustainable use of the ocean empowers policymakers, industry, the scientific community, and society. Life began in the ocean. Exist without it. provides us with oxygen, fresh water and food. Human beings depend on the ocean.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the EuroSea Day of the Ocean Data Week of the Ocean Race Grand Finale. I'm happy to moderate today's day. My name is Dina Iparkina. I work at the European Global Ocean Observing System, EuroGOOS. It's the European Alliance for the Global Ocean Observing System of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. We are here today to follow the EuroSea project approach to the marine data and marine information value chain. EuroSea is a European innovation action which brings together 53 oceanographic agencies across Europe to really consider everything from start to finish, from the way we acquire the data, to the way we process the information, to the way we deliver services for specific user needs. So we are taking this journey beneath the ocean knowledge value chain and see what is there. What kind of steps we are taking, what kind of challenges we have as a scientific community, how we collaborate with other communities, and how this all relates to the city of Genoa, to the ocean race, and to everyone here. We are having a full day meeting today. We start with a little bit interaction with you all via Slido, and I will ask my co-moderator Valeria Pizial to introduce the Slido interaction. We will have 6 short sessions, each with a set of speakers and a topic, and after each session you can ask your questions to the audience. So in addition to Slido, you will also have a little bit of Q&A interaction with us. Prepare your questions in advance. We hope that we have a lively interaction with everybody here. We have a fantastic lineup of best speakers and experts in European marine knowledge value chains, so use this opportunity to ask questions that come to your mind. And now here with the Slido, please, Valeria.
Good morning, everyone. Please show us the Slido. I assume you all are familiar with the tool, so you are going to be shown a QR code on the screen. Please focus on the QR code with your cell phone, and 3 questions for the morning session are going to appear. And we're going to have a little interaction later on during the morning. So we're going to have a little interaction, then a coffee break. So we're going to have 30 minutes. So please feel free to answer to the question during the morning, during the panels. And for the afternoon, we're going to do the same day. We're going to have 3 different questions. And also at the middle of the afternoon, we are going to have another coffee break and another interaction. So please feel free to use the tool. As I guess you already know, I'm seeing that the service is changing the slides. So you're going to have a couple of seconds to, well, not a couple seconds, couple minutes. A couple seconds will be too fast to get the Slido code.
So in the meantime, you can go to slido.com in your browser, just enter that, and we have a hashtag for the event.
Yes, it's going to be shown right now. Okay, so if you want to scan the QR code, otherwise the code for this morning activities is going to be 5514084. And the first question that is going to be an open question, it is what comes to your mind when we talk about ocean governance? So please feel free to insert your inputs, and we're going to generate a word cloud while you are putting in your inputs. And at the end of the first part of the morning, someone's already doing it. Thank you. We are going to have a chat about that. So that's going to be the first question. If you please could go to the second question, that is going to be in the form of a poll. It's what do you think is the main gap from the ocean observation point of view? So we ask you to choose from coordination actions, fundings, and lack of information system and tools to plan and manage the actions. And we also are going to have a chart regarding that. And if, please, we can go to the next and final poll of the morning. It's going to be, which is the most critical level of coordination in your opinion? So national, regional, European, and international. So thank you very much for already interacting with Slido, and thank you, Dina.
So the audience will be able to answer the polls during the coming minutes, right, Valeria?
During the whole morning.
The whole morning, okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So we will start the first session on the ocean observations governance and international cooperation. But before that, I would like to ask Mario Dogliani from SDG for Med Initiative and the Philippe Cousteau Foundation to open the scene for us and tell us why actually all of that is important for Europe and globally, and what kind of political agendas are we serving here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I will start with the video, and while
Hey, it's me. I have a problem. Well, actually, you have a problem too. Let me explain. Hundreds of thousands of ships every year. 13% of the global maritime traffic. 60,000 fishing boats. Yeah, 650 million inhabitants by 2050. I'm in the Mediterranean. And I'm suffering. I'm not talking about business here. I'm talking about life. Your life. Do you realize how vital I am for you and your family? Just think about it. I mean, food, weather, holidays, goods, jobs, wealth, energy, communication, transport, biodiversity. Well, let's face it. I'm dying. No excuses. You can do something. Every one of you, every day. Will you save me? You should. You can. You have to do this.
Okay, now we can go with the slides. So I will be very brief because I already said everything. I am not an expert of data, you are, and data are necessary for save Mediterranean and all the other seas and oceans. Now, I will elaborate very quickly on mission restore our ocean and waters by 2030, which is a major initiative by the Commission. I am not part of the Commission. I am the president of a foundation, SDG for Med. I am director for the Fundación Cousteau for Italy and international relations. However, we are working with that. So, is it on? Now, yes. So the mission, as I said, is a major initiative. It's not research only. It's almost everything from the Commission, who is coalescing all the effort, economical and knowledge, in order to achieve these objectives worldwide. And the mission is organized in basins like you, and of course one of the basins in the Mediterranean, but the goal of the mission is transversal to all the basins. And basically, the Commission, as I said, is coalescing all the possible resources, starting from its own internal resources. These are the projects already, let's say, put in synergy, more or less 4 billion euros so far, but still a lot to come, obviously, because this will last at least until 2030. And the actors are everybody, including, of course, scientists, including data, which is one of the fuels for almost everything you know better than me. Now, having said that, and I invite you, if you are not already aware of this, to go on the website of the Commission. There is plenty of material and explanations how these actors are being involved. It's very easy if one organization, administration, a person, whoever is interested, on the site of the Commission there is a charter, and you simply adhere to the charter. You say, I am interested to help. This is the distribution of charters received so far. Until now, Italy is in a good position, but here the game is not like there. The first to arrive win, no. We have to arrive all at the same time. And saying this, and I am closing, this very Monday, in that room, it was a little bit more hot than this. Antonio was there. He lost 20 kilos. A major initiative from mayors of Italy and Spain was presented. This is the shared transition plan of the mayor for the mission. Those mayors agreed to put in synergy their local plans for the part, of course, which is relevant for the mission, and the shared transition plan was created. This is the coverage so far of those mayors, mostly small municipality, because with all the due respect, a big municipality knows its way. Small municipality, sometimes they have a much larger area to cover, and they are small. So as everything which is small need critical mass to be effective. This is a couple of things about that. I don't waste your time. What has to do this with your work? Everything, because as you know better than me, data is necessary, everything. But in particular, I have seen yesterday evening, so I'm not sure I have understood your strategy, but the nice thing is that your strategy 2030 is the same deadline of the Commission mission, and is the same deadline, of course, of those mayors. So that's it, I think. It's quite easy to answer the question. I told already, you know better than me, you have to help us to help you. Those mayors need data. They don't even know to do what. And those mayors can provide you data, probably. They don't even know how, but you know, so we are safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent. So it's clear data is needed, but how is it coordinated internationally? We have one global ocean which connects different sea basins together, but what happens in one place affects the other. International cooperation is paramount for ocean knowledge. So here I'm happy to introduce Taco de Brun, the International Ocean Data Exchange Program of UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this one. Okay. When I started out in oceanographic data management, there was one lesson I learned from a wise woman. You may know her, Leslie Rickards. And a lesson that I've remembered ever since, and that was, don't reinvent the wheel. She would press that message home every time, every presentation she gave, she would have this message. And I think that it's very, very important. Do not reinvent the wheel or make use of what already exists and works well. Now I know that today we have the EuroSea Day, that EuroSea, for instance, and the EU's, the European Ocean Observing System, are not planning to reinvent the wheel. They want to make use of what already exists. In other words, from the website, the EuroSea project says that works to improve the European Ocean Observing System and bring together key European actors of ocean observing and forecasting. So we'll use the already existing systems and elements. From the website of the Ocean Observing System, mission is to coordinate and integrate the implicitly existing European communities and organizations, etc. So that's good. And today, many of those contributing elements will be shown and presented. Nevertheless, it way too often happens that people follow one hype and try to indeed reinvent the wheel to make something new, while something already exists which could be used and be put to good use. To prevent that, following those hypes and reinventing the wheel, coordination is required. And coordination at probably the highest levels, the global levels, is required to do that. And another element of the coordination, and that was mentioned yesterday, communication. So that's what makes a day of today so important, that we communicate and tell the audience and the rest of the world about all the systems which already exist, so that we can use those systems and do not have to reinvent the wheel. Now, one of the organizations which operates on a global level is the International Oceanographic Data and Information Exchange Committee of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, IODE. And this is IODE. I showed the slide yesterday, but IODE consists of 58 national oceanographic data centers and some 40 associate data units. Those are regional organizations or institutes, etc., and 6 associate information units, libraries mainly. IOD has a project office in Ostend with a staff of about 6 to 8 people, depending on, hosted by the Flanders Marine Institute at the Inn of Ocean campus. And IODE has a series of projects, you could call them, but are kind of permanent projects. Components is the new word. I'll mention just a few of those components which can be of value for the development of both EuroSea as well as the EU's. The first one is about capacity development, capacity building. Ocean Teacher Global Academy provides a comprehensive internet-based training platform and supports both a classroom training as well as online or distance learning. And well, you can read the rest. It also has a network of regional training centers, about 6 all around the world, with a central hub in Ostend in Belgium. And I invite you to go to the website to find out what courses are offered and how you can use that in your own work. Second one is a joint IODE's GOOSE initiative, which is the Ocean Best Practices System. It's a sustained repository of best practices and methods. And from the website again, OBPS is a global sustained system comprising technological solutions and community approaches to enhance management of methods as well as support the development of ocean best practices. And currently, and we're counting, there are 1,943 of those best practices available. And again, I invite you to go to the website where you can find much more information and what kind of best practices are available. The Ocean Biodiversity Information System is maintained by IUDE, and that is, as the word already said, a biodiversity system, global open access data and information clearinghouse for marine biodiversity data, and it has over 100 million present records, and well, you can see the numbers. Quite impressive. It's the largest contributor to GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. The World Ocean Database, the largest collection of uniformly formatted, quality-controlled, and publicly available ocean data profile data, and hosted in the US by NCEI. Ocean Expert is another information system with a global directory of marine and freshwater professionals, but can also be used to run meetings. And the Ocean ODIS-CAT, the Ocean Data and Information System Catalog of Sources, is an online and browsable, searchable catalog of existing ocean-related web-based sources and systems. It's data, but it's just a small part of. There are many, almost there. Many different data and information types available, and over 3,000 at the moment. And I think this is my final slide. Ocean Info Hub and the ODIS system, that is a digital ecosystem connecting existing and future data and information systems, and it's very democratic in the sense that everybody can participate and provide access to their own data and information, as well as get access to the data and information of all other nodes in the system. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Fantastic and right on time. A diversity of information systems. And what kind of observations we need to feed all these many systems. So now I am calling Emanuela Rossiano. Thanks a lot, Daco. I will, yeah, you can give this to Emanuela. From the IUC's International Global Monitoring Support Center for the Global Ocean Observing System. So you're going to tell us about how observations are coordinated globally and how you can monitor the status of the observations. Thanks very much.
So good morning, everyone, and buongiorno a tutti. So I'm part of the Ocean Ops team. Ocean Ops is a joint center of two United Nations agencies, the World Meteorological Organization and the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. And we provide coordination, support, monitoring to the Global Ocean Observing System. So the Global Ocean Observing System, as I told yesterday, if someone was there, is composed by a few hundred satellites and thousands of instruments and ships at sea that continuously monitor the global ocean and the atmosphere above it to collect essential data used by experts, scientists around the world to study climate, improve weather forecast, provide early warnings, and monitor the ocean health. The in situ part, so all instruments and ships that are at sea of this system, of the GOOS, include about 9,000 meteorological and oceanographic observing systems, including the autonomous profiling floats, the Argo floats, drifting buoys, fixed buoys, piloted robots, also marine mammals equipped with oceanographic sensors, and many others. So all these instruments are part of 13 global ocean observing networks, which are implemented by 84 countries in a global collaborative effort to collect more than 100,000 observations per day of physical, biogeochemical, and biological variables used by scientists and experts for all applications I have said before. So the Global Ocean Observing System is sponsored by 4 United Nations agencies. Its work is oversighted by a multinational steering committee, and the GOOS Core Office enables the collaboration between different parts of the system to enable collaboration between the requirements, which are the inputs of the observing system, with the observations and the outputs represented by data and information, which then provide services for end users and which are also the source of the requirements. So the requirements are provided by 3 expert panels on physics and climate, biogeochemistry, biology and ecosystems. And these expert panels supply the steering committee with the expertise and scientific advice to develop sampling requirements and guide the assessment of the global ocean observing system. The requirements are then linked with the observations through an observation coordination group, which guide the implementation of the system by coordinating it through Ocean Ops. So we at Ocean Ops provide monitoring and support for 30 global ocean observing networks, which measure different variables at different space and time scales. To the observation also contribute some regional alliances, which are coalitions of nations and institutions. And they develop ocean monitoring services to meet regional and national priorities. To the observation also contribute some international European projects like the EuroSea and other NGOs, industry, new partners and networks. And the observation then flow into a global data and information system, international, global, regional data system like the GTS, the Global Telecommunication System of WMO, IOD, InMonNet, which are the vital operational links between the observations, the networks, and the services, which are delivered to end users to better understand some phenomena and support decision making, for example. So Ocean Ops for over 20 years has been providing coordination support to the observing networks to take the pulse of the goose in real time. We are a team of 7 people in Brest, 1 in Monaco and 1 in Toulouse. And we are funded by yearly voluntary contributions from UN member states and Europe. In this pie chart are only showed the contributions we received in 2022, so last year, and are missing some biannual contributions we received, for example, from ETT and IMONET. So the core services provided by Ocean Ops to the observing community are guided by its 5-year strategic plan through a few key strategic goals. We provide monitoring of the status of the global networks and also the integrated system to improve its performance. For this, we have developed a web-based dashboard with a rich analysis toolbox and API with a monthly status map, metrics, and statistics. We also analyze the network's trend. We provide recommendations to the implementers and the steering teams to identify gaps in the system and evaluate its adequacy. And we also provide policy and decision makers with some high-level report on the status and the value of the observing system. We also lead metadata standardization and integration across all global networks. For that, we gather all metadata and information from different actors, as we can see here on the image. We also disseminate standards for metadata harmonization. We ensure the exchange of high-quality metadata across all networks, and we connect our services with international, global, regional data information system. Another services is the support to the daily operations, to the deployment operations. For that, we facilitate these operations, providing opportunities for coordinating the opportunities for the deployment. We also provide the recommendations on where and when to deploy instruments at sea. We encourage international collaboration to enable synergies, and we maintain some specific network services like the IOC UNESCO warning and notification for a float approaching the EZ. We also allocate a unique WMO identifiers to all meteorological oceanographic instruments at sea. And lastly, we support new data streams and networks like the animal-borne ocean sensors through dedicated monitoring and support services to new networks, regional alliances, EU projects like the EuroSea, in which we were part of EuroSea and provided some support and works through different work packages. The aim of this dedicated support is to integrate these contributions to the observing system into the global observing system. And we also collaborate with civil society industry to support the GOOS implementations, and for this in 2021 we launched the Odyssey project, which is a project endorsed by the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And the aim of this project is to recognize and collect, structure all contribution from citizens, including divers, surfers, NGOs, fishing companies, shipping companies, and many others under a coordinated project. So the activities developed under Odyssey allow us to deploy instruments and collect data from hard-to-reach locations. For example, this is what we have done with the Ocean Race team, that this year deployed each of the 5 MOCA boats deployed 3 weather buoys in the Southern Ocean around Antarctica, so to fill critical observational gaps in the system and support the efficiency of the sustainability of the observing networks. So I will conclude saying that international coordination and governance of the ocean observation are important for many reasons. Including ensure that data and metadata information are collected and shared following international standards and best practices. Also to increase the synergies, collaborations across all communities, and build a fit-for-purpose global ocean observing system that deliver the essential data, observation, information needed to better protect the ocean, manage its space resources for our sustainable development and well-being. And as I said yesterday, we cannot manage what we do not measure. So we need observation, we need to collect data because these data are crucial for our knowledge of the state of the ocean, to support decision-making and implement protection and restoration actions. So if you want to know more about Ocean Ops, our activities, or the Odyssey project, you can follow us at oceanops_goose on social media, and you can also visit our website. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emanuela. I hope you're curious to find out more about the activities of the Global Ocean Observing System and Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, so keep your questions for a later interaction with the speakers. And now I will introduce Inga Lips, who is director of EuroGOOS and my boss. She's also chairing the steering group for the European Ocean Observing System framework, EUS, which is led by EuroGOOS, but with many other partners, and which is really developed through the EuroSea project, among other means. And Inga is going to tell us how the observations are coordinated in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. I will do my best with this short time frame So bringing you from the global part to the European coordination issues. Okay. Nothing happens? Okay, backwards. I would start my presentation with the policy brief published by Marine Board, where they also identify challenges what we have in our coordination system currently, and they also provided different recommendations how we should go forward from the point where we are. And just to quickly mention those recommendations, that we really need to recognize that in situ observations are, as a large-scale essential enabling infrastructure that is needed to deliver the ocean data as a public good. And we should work more to support streamlined, efficient coordination efforts, such as European Ocean Observing System, to really support the pan-European activities. We need to have a strengthened, integrated, combined capability of the system to deliver the data and information that supports sustainable development, and be able to establish a process to review the cost and performances, because very often it's really difficult to estimate the cost that we currently have, and politicians are, this is a question that politicians are often asking. Also the general public is curious that how much money is spent for the ocean observations, but together with the information how much is spent, we also need to communicate what is the value of those observations. So it's not just about the money. And which is very important is that we really need to facilitate more our collaboration and partnership with the industry and private sector, because this is a shared responsibility. This is not the responsibility of the observing community only. And we need to co-design the holistic observing system that really integrates different parts of the system. And like Taco said, we don't need to invent a wheel, but connect different systems that are already there. I showed you something similar also yesterday about the different levels of coordination in Europe. So we have the regional coordinations, pan-European coordination and national coordination. I have put these different levels in different boxes to really demonstrate how scattered our coordination efforts are. So if someone is telling you that we lack coordination, no, we do not lack coordination. I think we have quite a lot of coordination. But what we lack is the integration of coordination. So this is a key. We really need to connect our efforts and to integrate our activities so that we can use the resources that we have more efficiently. So the message is that Europe really needs a strong and connected ocean observing capacities, not the fragmented systems as we have right now. And to make a step forward to that direction, in the beginning of March this year, we launched the second EU strategy for the next 5 years. And we named this strategy as Advancing EUs, because until now it has been like a design phase, trying to bring all the communities together. But now we really need to work towards system, because we don't have currently in Europe a system as such. And we also published a roadmap for implementation, which we named Co-Designing EUs. And when we are talking about the EUs, we are talking about the infrastructure, platform, sensors, but also people that gather essential data and information about Europe's ocean, seas and coastal waters. And Tak already showed you the mission of the new EU strategy, which is to coordinate and integrate European communities and organizations operating, supporting and maintaining ocean observing infrastructure and activities, but also fostering collaboration and innovation. And now I will give you in a very short overview of the roadmap for implementation. So it's really like a EU's roadmap implementation in a nutshell, not going into details of different actions, but just listing the different activities that we have included into that implementation plan. So in the center, we have this co-designing EUs in collaboration with stakeholders. This is a key, and there is a separate activity also to that we really need to understand better the stakeholder needs and priorities, And when we are talking about the stakeholders, I again want to stress that private sector and industry are the key stakeholders we really need to communicate with to understand what do they need and to try to design our system in a way that also fulfills their priorities and needs, not only the research priorities or commission priorities. The second activity is very important. We really need to improve the visibility of ocean observing activities, which I also mentioned yesterday, that instead of sharing maps of stations or information about what kind of platforms we are using in different sea areas, we should share more the plans, what we are going to do, so that different actors can collaborate, they can combine the efforts and make then the use of resources more efficient. And the second very, very important activity is the communication. Actually today, again, it's a little bit not exactly what I was expecting. Don't take it personally, Antonia, but I was expecting that we are standing down there at the stage and we are talking with the public instead of talking here with ourselves again, because we need to have a kind of mindset in our communication. People need to understand better the value of observations. They need to understand better that if they open an app or a laptop, if they look for products and services, that it's a hard work and commitment and a lot of resources behind. And we need to know how to communicate it better. There is a special activity for fostering innovation in ocean observation. And I think on Friday, you have this low-cost sensor day, which is very important. And it's also about the engaging the public in the observation responsibilities. And when we are talking about the innovation in ocean observation, we should not only think about the innovation in the infrastructure such, I mean the observing infrastructure, but also in the data infrastructure, because data flows are increasing enormously with the new technology developments, and we need to manage the data, and we need to analyze the data. And if we are talking about open data sharing, this is a key, because we don't want to make observations at the same time, at the same place, by many organizations, so we better share the observation results to everyone openly. But to be able to use the others' data, we really need to be sure that the data qualities are similar. So otherwise it's very difficult to combine the data and use the data collected by the other organizations. So we really need to promote the best practices and different data standards. And the last but not least, we need to advance from right now the scattered system to a well-connected, coordinated ocean observing system. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Inga. So from observations, let's zoom into the data. And do we have enough of it? What do we do with it? How do we share it? So here we are with Antonio Novellino, who is the organizer of today's event. And he will zoom into the services of EMODnet. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dina. Well, actually, you have already seen, most of you have already seen this, but just to set the scene, okay, we are speaking about EMODnet. It is very in line with what has been already mentioned this morning, because one of the key, let's say, motivator for setting up EMODnet was to collect once and use many times. This was the first motto that we had in EMODnet when it was launched. It is a long-term program, and it was developed in 7 thematic areas. So we have thematic projects that are dealing with the different domains. And it is promoting, the data sharing, the fairness of the data, and we are promoting CCBY, access to data, because in order to make use of data, we need to access data, we need to access with a clear license to the data. And then, of course, it's marrying, it's not reinventing the wheel, but since the beginning, it was, the mandate was to build on top of what was already existing. So we were taking, most of the activity that has been done by EuroGoose, by SeaDataNet, and the network of National Geographic Data Center in order to elevate this to a further level, so converge and make the use of all these different things. And of course, we also started collaborating with Ocean Ops, because that is also the global component of what we're doing at the European level. The way around. We achieved, it was already mentioned yesterday, a very important milestone this January when the new central system has been launched. Nowadays, everything that you may find in IMONET is under a European domain, and all the different thematics, data, and products are available at a single place. This is just an example of one map from the human activities. This is the ship density maps, and you can also see some of the controls that you may use in order to work with the portal. And then I also invite you to, the ones that don't know yet the portal, to visit the IMONET portal, in which you can also see some use cases about how the people are using the data that are made available by IMONET. But now, today, as we're speaking about EuroSea, and the role also, or the role of IMONET together with EuroSea, I'm focusing more on one specific point of view from the physics thematic assembly, because we were involved in EuroSea in order to, as stakeholders, as we said, because we are receiving some of the data. And IMONET is not running platform, so we are integrating data. And so we need activity of the people that are at sea and are collecting data. So we are relaying also on the activity of the network platforms that has been organized also under EuroGoose. In a similar way, they are organized at the global level. So here, this is, a table in which we see, somehow how they are connecting, or they are, which is the relationship between the different people. And these are quite important for us, because as under modern physics, we are collecting, ocean physics parameters. All these platforms are mainly recording, at least are recording also ocean physics parameters. So we are one main integrator for this data. So where we see the connection or the value of IMONET together, in relationship with EuroSea. This is somehow the value chain that has been designed in EuroSea. So, the goal was to improve the European ocean observing system, integration into the global context, deliver ocean observation forecast, knowledge about ocean climate, marine ecosystem, vulnerability, demonstrate the importance of the ocean, significance for an economically viable, healthy society. So some things that has been presented before. And we have these, let's say, 10 steps towards this process, where we can see the connection and the value of IMONET. It's over there. So we can help in the coordination, we can help in the system design, we can help in the network integration, and we can help in the data integration and simulation. Why? Because if we think about that, IMONET can be considered the endpoint for many of the data, we can use IMONET to understand where we need more data, so we can help in the system design. We can see if the integration of the data is working well, because if they end up into IMONET, it means that all the steps behind are working properly. So we can see. Yesterday we discussed about the case of the ocean race. Every step is working well. So we see that this initiative is delivering data, is connected with the Ocean Ops, is connected with the Global Data Assembly Center, so we see the data in IMONET. So it's working well. And we can also offer this data for other valuable products, for example, assimilation, because if a data, especially for physical data, if the data is coming into IMONET, it's immediately shared with Copernicus. So we are also improving the forecasting capability. And now, just very quickly, showing some example. If we consider the Argo, perfect, because everything is done with Argo, we see it's work. Everything is flowing operationally. It's also going to the National Geographic Data Center, so we are doing very well in this case. If we think about the HF radar, I was mentioning yesterday that it was a best practice, but yesterday, just playing with the slides, I noted that we need to improve. Probably we're missing, it's our side that we're missing one point, it's the island things. But again, this is a valuable tool, because we know that from EuroGoose, we are supposed to have a station, a site that is covered by HF radar, but we don't see it in Emonet. So we need to see where the problem is, because it's part of the integration. Ferry box, same as before. Here is easy. Sorry, these are gliders. It's not ferry box. It's easy to see. This is just an overview. Sorry, I didn't say. It's an overview of the last year of recording. So the positions are where the platform was the last time that transmitted data. So in this case, I mean, we see that there are some Baltic data, and we don't see them. So we need to improve in the coordination. Then, yesterday, we discussed about this quite a lot. I mean, we have gaps, so we can use in order to understand where the gaps are. We have gaps in the poles, but if we zoom in the coastal areas, we have much more and bigger gaps in the coastal areas. This is just an overview of this area. So in the past year, if you think about that we have to provide data to the industry, I mean, only bathymetry is working well, I would say. So, well done, Dick. And so Emonet can help in this process of coordination, integration, facilitating new data into the system, improvement, best practice. Of course, it's important best practice in order to make a valuable use of the data, and having fairness. And so we can facilitate also the understanding of complementary data that are not yet in the system. I always use this slide because I like it very much, because it's from the fishing vessel activities. We can see the complementarity of different activities, the citizen science activity, let's say, or professional, people that are working in a different work field compared to the people that are working in oceanography or in the marine sector, as it is for the recording. And we see how complementary are the different things, because in the, let's say, in the left side, we see the coverage from the Argo, and in this side, the central side, we see the coverage from the fishing activity. And so we can understand how complementary they are. So if we put all this data together, of course, we are doing a proper job. But fishing vessel is one example. We mentioned that ocean race is another example, because we can cover some areas that are not covered by other things, but we need to think about all the citizen science activity that they can be involved in the system. And today we are going to see more about this. Emonet is working together with Copernicus Service to provide the backbone for the European digital twin. That is another goal that we are aiming all together. And so this will lead to a step change in the capability for big data ocean analysis, ocean prediction, scenarios, setting up climate change, broader societal application. But of course, everything that has been mentioned before by Inga is fundamental, because if we don't follow, the recommendation or, the nice schema that you presented, we cannot achieve this kind of goal, and we cannot answer to some of the main directives that we have at the European level. How to contribute? Emonet is also providing this horizontal platform that is the ingestion. And it was really designed to facilitate the drop, the delivery, the sharing of data. It's working for both delayed mode data. So we have a portal, we have an easy stepwise procedure that is helping people to deliver the data. And it's taken by expert groups in order to do the further steps, in order to apply the common standards, the common formats, and so on. And then, of course, we are also providing, as Emonet network, all the expertise in order to help the people to deliver the data. So we're also offering this training capacity. And once again, I said yesterday, I say it today because I have some new people here. Please inform your colleagues that Emonet is also helping this. So if they need help, we are there for giving help. And then, of course, this is quite important. We need open access data. And I said it's working very well for the delayed mode data, but it's also working for the operational data. And in this case, we can apply some different procedures, some different tools. Together, the joint work of Emonet Physics and Emonet Ingestion delivered already a Docker that is an application that you can install in order to facilitate the interoperability. And so if you do this, then you apply the data, then you can fill the pipeline that we were designing. You get also support to apply the correct metadata, and then the data can be monitored. And you can see, if, in dashboards like the one that Emanuela was presenting, we can see the right coverage of the data. So that was my final message. And please save the date, because we are going to organize another nice event in the end of the year.
Thanks very much. Yeah, you can put them here. Yeah, microphone. So, Valeria, what is happening with our Slido?
Thank you. Okay, so we do already have a few interesting contributions. If we can show the first question, we start looking at the creation of our work cloud, in which we have 3 C's, actually, as the biggest ones, which are collaboration, coordination, and communication. And the question was, what comes to your mind when we talk about ocean governance? We do also have the other side, so we have complexity, we have the policy side, and overall we do have protecting our oceans, responsible management, and efficient management, and resources, connectivity, and interoperability. So I guess it's going to be interesting to see how this work cloud evolves during the day. Regarding the second question, which is what do you think is the main gap from the ocean observation point of view? The biggest, actually, half of the answers were regarding coordination actions. Also, funding comes second place. And actually, the lack of information system comes third place with just 10% of the answers. Regarding the next question, which is the most critical level of coordination in your opinion, national and international are battling side to side. We do have 0% that thinks regional is the most critical level. And European, just 8% by now. And I think also it's going to be interesting to see how this situation is going to evolve. So keep on interacting. And if you go on slido.com, the number is still 5514084. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to ask the 4 speakers of this session to come on stage to have a little chat with all of us. We have 15 minutes for an interaction. If you have questions, so just Inga, Emanuela, Taco, and Antonio, please. You can sit here. If you have questions, anyone has questions? Otherwise, I start with my questions, because I have. All right, think about it. So I will start with Emanuela. Can I be here? So you mentioned that... there are 2. Oh, okay, I didn't see. Fantastic. Yes. Simona, yes. Hello, please. Go ahead.
Good morning. I have a question for Emanuela. That start mentioning the integration of metadata at the international level within the goods. I imagine it is the integration of different observing systems, different networks, but also Inga was mentioning the importance of combining observation coming from different sources. What are you doing at Ocean Ops regarding the integration of metadata, the harmonization? If you can tell a little bit more about this. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, what we do, as I show in the slide, with the first thing we collect information from different sources, so ship operators, manufacturers, scientists. So we collect all metadata. Then we also have a quality control on this metadata to harmonize the vocabularies. Because it's important that all observing system and instruments have the same vocabulary on metadata. And then for this harmonization and integration, we work directly with the people that provide the metadata. And this integration is also necessary then to provide this information, for example, to the World Meteorological Information System, so to have an international global database of metadata information. So the integration is really, and we also deliver some and work with the implementers to have some best practices on metadata harmonization. this is really fundamental to have a common database of metadata for all networks, because as we have seen, we have 9,000 instruments at sea that we monitor. We have a lot of metadata, and for this we need to have a common database of information.
Thank you very much. I think just to interact a little bit I think that the best practices are very important in order to be able to map metadata from one system to the other. But now what we would need as scientists is also a tool, a software, a service that is able to map, the metadata from one system to the other. So my suggestion is to evolve a little bit. Instead of providing only recommendation or guidance, it's also crucial to have, let's say, software that is enabling this integration of metadata.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you. And I also encourage you and all people to go to the Ocean Ops website, and you will see that most of this work is already done. We need to improve, but we are really working on metadata and this integration for over 20 years.
I would like to add a comment, because something that I found very useful from Ocean Ops is that they have people allocated in order to deal with the people. So they are really calling the people, asking for the information that they are missing. So that is a kind of things that we need to keep having in mind, because sometimes you need softwares. Of course, you need to have people trained in order to apply some things. But the most important part is also to really to ask the people kindly to fill the information. And they are doing an excellent job in that. That is, a very cornerstone of everything in order to map and monitor everything that we are doing. Then the second step, they are already developing APIs, but what we need to work on is making some different vocabularies talking each other in a better way. And this is also something that we are already doing with CDataNet, with Blue Cloud 2026, but we need to keep working on that. It's a kind of priority from the technical point of view.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, please go ahead, Jay.
Jay Perlman, IEEE. It's to all four of you. You've talked about measurements and observations and managing data, and Inga, you talked about the beginnings of coordination through EUROSea. The value of this is really in the applications and the end user getting the information they need. How are you connecting the data you're talking about, or the metadata you're talking about, to the end use?
I can start. Emonet is one tool to show this, because if the metadata are filled in the proper way, they are following the data, so they are coming back to back with the data. And so when you access the system, you also get this information. So if you're following the best practice, then also the final end user can get all the metadata that you need in order to consume the data in a proper way. This is one level, of course. It's not, complete level, but it's one level.
And I might add here that actually, when we are talking about the Ocean Ops, there are a lot of global networks in Ocean Ops systems, but we are still lacking a lot of European networks. So we are not able yet to really understand our capabilities. So if European networks are also included into the system, we can see what's in the water, what are the performances, and then we can also follow, are those data also delivered to different databases when we see that there are a lot of assets or infrastructures in the water, so there should be a lot of data also coming in to the databases. And if this is not the case, then we can start chasing a little bit and to see why data are not delivered to the databases. So this could be also a tool to see what data are available there without knocking the door of every research institute and asking for the data.
I like the question because it it kind of reminds us that we should, all we should be doing should be user-driven. But I'm also not very worried about that, because the data collected, the observations done are indeed user-driven. It's either from scientific groups with a science interest, and then they do the measurements that they need to be doing, or it's from government agencies which have an obligation, often by law, to do certain measurements, and so the observations themselves are, in most cases, user-driven. So it's actually the users who want those observations to be done and then get the data. But it's a good reminder, your question about that we should focus on the user.
Thank you. I think we have one from Dick, please.
No, I was a little bit, Ingo was saying that we are not chasing, let's say, the European networks, but I think that's a wrong conclusion, because immanent physics is set up for that purpose, to bring together the European open, let's say, operational oceanography stations and networks, make them more accessible, discoverable, and Antonio showed a very nice map. You saw a lot of stations there. And we also work closely together between immanent physics and ingestion to chase up everybody else who is in the water and collecting data. That's also one of the topics, I think, of why we are here in Genoa, that we work together also with citizen science, etc. So I think in Europe we have quite a good mechanism to chase and to find, to identify, to access data coming from all the operational activities. And the ones which are missing will be, let's say, they will be dealt with pretty soon, because that's part of our mission, to get closer and closer to all these activities that take place. Second step is that when we have data from operations, we want to make them also more quality controlled, more validated, better documented. So we go then to a stage of elaboration, for which we have also an excellent data network in Europe, which we call CDataNet. And in CDataNet we have all the national oceanographic data centers. They are in contact with, say, the operational networks. And then there is a delay, of course, always, let's say, in that process, but there's something really also on the map. So I don't think we can conclude that in Europe we are missing certain elements. We are not. We only have to do put even more energy in it, of course, to make it complete. But it's never complete. It will never be complete. But we are, I would always say 80 to 90%, we are doing fine. So we have to go now, let's say, the last mile, which is 10%, which takes us many times, but many energy, a lot of energy. But it's we have quite good infrastructure here. Okay?
Yeah, and one key point is also that we need to go to people, because sometimes it's also, I mean, again, don't take it personally, but at EuroGoose level, we see that we are waiting that the people give the information. We saw with ingestion it's working quite well if we go to the people. So we need to, I mean, you say it, I mean, we need to do communication, we need to go to do communication to people, but we need to do communication to the people that are collecting data, because sometimes they don't know that they can support us, or how easy it is to be connected and, I mean, support programs or initiative like Immonet, Goose in general.
And what kind of activities are being done in Europe and globally to engage those networks, those data providers, broader than above, beyond the scientific community, beyond the ones who are already being engaged? What kind of engagement?
At European level, we have ingestion that is working quite a lot. We are doing quite a lot of roadshow in order to involve people. We are setting up, I mean, initiative in many member states. We need to keep doing that. We need to enlarge this activity, because that is a kind of communicational activity that is also bring. We had a very good example in Sweden. Martin was there, so he can also tell about that. And when you start showing how easy is it, and which is the kind of, let's say, expertise network that you can offer in order to facilitate this process, then you have very engaged people. And you see that things are little by little, but are becoming faster and faster.
Okay, so what are the actions at European level, at global level, in terms of engagement? Maybe to Inga and to Emanuela?
Yes, at OceanOps, this is the daily work of the experts, focal points, coordinators, to communicate, work hand in hand with all implementers, ship operators, all people that provide this information, and try to make them aware of the importance of this sharing their metadata, their information. So this is basically what we do every day, is really try to communicate and understand their needs and to promote the importance of this sharing.
Thank you. Do you want to reflect on this? Okay, then we take a question. Jan Bart? Yes, please.
Yes. Not really a question, but coming back to the question from Jay on the user driven approach and the comment that Taco also picked up on. I think if we look at what the end users really need to be able to take decisions, they're not really interested that much in the raw data and observations. They really need added value products and services. So I think the question relates a little bit to what kind of interfaces do exist. Not only, obviously, communication with data providers and sharing is important, but it's more than that. It's really this co-design and co-development process of added value products and services, and are they adequate and fit for purpose, and what is needed to improve them up to the level to fill the gaps that you can actually take decisions on them. I know that in many of the aggregators that provide data products. It's the case in EMOTNet Physics, in chemistry. Alessandra Giorgetti presented yesterday. A very clear client are the MSFD actors, and there is an active dialogue to understand what are the requirements for the products and services. So I think there is still a lot of work to be done, probably, to strengthen those interfaces and to feed that back to the data collection. So I think that's maybe the question, what can we do more in that level?
I totally agree with you. And when I was referring to the dialogues with stakeholders, I was emphasizing the private sector and industry, but at the same time, it's also necessary to have a very close dialogues with service and product providers. So what are their needs in the observation system? So where are the gaps in observations that would improve the products and services in the future?
And maybe we can find some answer later today, because these are topics that we're going to explore with some end-user application also.
Absolutely, yes, in the last part. Okay, I just want to close on one note, which is maybe directed more to Taco, but everybody can contribute. So IOC Global Ocean State Report tells us that we have more data available and more marine science information and publications available for the global north. How, at the global level, do you think we should improve sharing of existing data and also enhancing the capacities?
That's something that we as a community, but also at the national level in each country, have been struggling with for a long time. And I wish I had a straightforward answer to that, but I don't. In the end, well, part of it is part of the answer is invest in capacity building, but it's also that's not the entire answer. Part of it is also funding, and that's a very risky remark, because you see that in certain regions in the southern hemisphere, and that these capacity building activities and the associated funding to actually do observations and to do work really pick up and are successful, while in other regions it's much less successful and probably seen as a, it's less successful, and it's difficult to find out why it is successful in certain regions and why it's not that successful in other regions.
That's all I can say at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. So we will have a break of 10 minutes. We reconvene here at 12 sharp all together to discuss more on the modeling side of things and forecasting and moving slowly towards the services for those bespoke end users we've been talking about. Thank you very much. Dear audience, dear speakers, we are reconvening. Who is going to show Vega for next? Yeah, you're gonna. Okay. Can you be with me to make sure that it? So I'm announcing him, and it will just go online. Yeah. It will just go online. Okay, super. Okay. All right, so it's 12 o'clock. We will try to be on time. Thank you very much for rejoining the room. I know it's nice outside. It's cooler here, so. We are starting our session. And the hosts of the meeting are also joining us at the back. Huh? Coffees. Antonio, prego. All right. Let's get the ball rolling. So our second session will be dedicated to forecasting services. And we will start with Vega Forneris, who is joining us online. Vega is from the Institute of Marine Sciences of the Italian National Research Council. And he's going to tell us about remote sensing the ocean predominantly, and how do we use this information. So I will ask our technical team to put Vega online. Hello, welcome. Are you able to see us?
Yep.
Fantastic.
Can you hear me?
And we can see and hear you very well. Okay, please, Vega, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of information I want to share with you, so let's go straight to the point. So today we are going to see what the satellite observation are used by my institute for within the Copernicus Marine Service. So we already have some information about the in-situ observation collected from monitoring system, profiling, gliders, and so on. We know about the models, which are numerical models that run on computers. Now we will focus on the satellite observations, which are very important because thanks to their characteristics, they can provide a synoptic, regular, and systematic mapping of the main essential ocean variables, which are part of the essential climate variables of global states. These three kinds of observation, way to describe and observe our system are actually interconnected. The in-situ observation, in fact, validates the satellite algorithms, and both are assimilated by the models. Let's make a step back. What's actually a satellite? Well, we know that is an orbiting object, orbiting around a planet. If they are natural, we call them moons. If they are not, well, they are artificial satellites. There are a lot of different satellites orbiting around our world. Some of them are reserved for the Earth observation. Depending on the number of the satellites, the altitude, the orbit, and the other variables, we can cover the whole globe in different time. For example, you have an example of Sentinel-2 global coverage that cover the whole globe within 5 days. Each satellite includes more sensors that are used for different scopes. For example, in the Sentinel-3, we have the LSTR, OLSHI, and so on. Once the satellite and the sensors acquire the data from the space, they are transmitted to the ground segment. Usually, the very first level is the level 0. The ground segment, the agency, they process this data into further refined source data, like such the level 1 and level 2. All this level can have some sub-levels, L1A, etc., depending on the characteristics. They are enriched with some more information, metadata, geolocation, etc. Let's say that usually the level 1 and level 2 are the sources for the scientific institutes that process this data into further refining this information, which are usually the level 3. The variables are mapped in a uniform space and time grid scale, or level 4, which uses the L3 usually with the interpolation activities for having a gap-free map. This data can be processed in near real time or real time for operative purposes, or in delete time once the data is consolidated by the ground segment agency, or even in a multi-year time series. These are more important for understanding how climate change. So each sensor can be a passive sensor. For example, all the radiometers are passive sensors, and each of them provide some different, can be used for extracting different variables, or active sensors, which are the satellite altimeter, scattrometer on the radar. All again, they can be used for the essential global, the essential ocean variables are grouped by the physics, the characteristics, the physics. The blue are such as the SST, the temperature, the white, the sea ice, like the sea ice thickness, or the green, the biochemistry, like the chlorophyll concentration, again, processed in near real time or delayed mode. So we try to implement some enterprises approaches when writing down our codes. So it's a continuous analysis on the needs from the stakeholders, from internal scientific needs and so on. We plan, we try, we test, we deploy, and we put into operation. Now, after the operations, and when we finally have our raw data, for example, L3, 99.99999% of the scientists are happy like that. They have their data, they can do their analysis, their study. It is not. We still need some post-processing, applying metadata, applying some more convention for reaching the widest number of users, for example. So we can push the data into some international, national operational services, scientific projects, and which are collected into catalogs and provided to the users. So how does it work, the processing chain, for example? Well, the first step is obviously to identify the passages of interest based on the region we are studying and the date in analysis. So, for example, starting from, this is the code, this is the workflow for the sea surface temperature we run at CNR. So we download the data in the level 2 data. Each passage is processed independently from each other. So we pass to the L3 uncollated data. This data is then merged for having a wider coverage. This is the L3C collated single sensor product. Each map is then merged into a multi-sensor product, which, as you can see, can offer more information on the global scale. We apply, as said, the formatting and metadata, and we publish and archive in our system. The level 3 data is then used for producing the L4 data, which, as said, is a gap-free product. It means usually interpolation, but for extension, we usually refer to L4 also for the monthly average, because usually, depending on the region at the time, it is gap-free. The final files have one or more main variable, like the temperature, plus some additional auxiliary variables like the quality flags, the estimated errors, and so on. They are usually on regular grid, 2D or 3D if we consider also the depth level, and they point to a specific time, hourly, daily, monthly, and so on. I will go very quickly on the next 2-3 slides. it is important for the meta-adaptation to apply the FAIR principles, for example. These are principles that helps the guides the producer to enrich the data in order to be accessible by the wider number of users. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And this is achieved thanks to some international convention and formats. For example, most of the data now, oceanographic data, is packed and formatted with an SDF format. And we adopt several important international conventions, such as the Climate and Forecast Metadata Convention, such as the Attribute Convention for Data Discoveries. Some data like the SST follow stricter guidelines, for example, defined by the group of high resolution of sea surface temperature, each of them providing more information on how to qualify your data. So once we have this data format, thanks to the international recognized formats and convention, we can push the data into the dissemination units or the catalogs, such as EMODNet that Antonio presented before, or as in this case, to the Copernicus Marine Service, which since 2015 collects and provides to the users all the information we can gather about our oceans. They are from in-situ observation, satellite observation, and modeling. So,
Diego, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
I'm going very fast. So, these are the data is collected and grouped into different data sets based on the data of their structure, feature, and so on. The datasets are presented into products. The products are split into different backends for improved performance and robustness. We are talking about 8 terabytes of RAM and more than 1,500 cores. And from the user's point of view, you can now access the data, for example, thanks to WMS, the Web Map Service, that are interactive maps. So you can click on a point having the information of the value of the data, or directly from your client opened up via the opened up interface. This is an example of a Panoply client, or directly MATLAB or Python, mostly every programming code. I go quickly on this slide. You can have a look later. Important thing, you will have a specific presentation after this one. Why we do all this is not just for scientific content. It's because we support the blue economy. For the environment, for example, for monitoring water quality, for sustainable monitoring transparent coastal waters, for the society, monitoring the jellyfish detection system, or for detecting the potential oil spills. And for the economy, for example, the sustaining fishery is one of my favorite, honestly. And that's all. I'm sorry for how quick I had to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I hope you hear the applause.
Thank you. Thank you to all.
I would like to invite now Dix Hub to come on stage and tell us something about in situ data. So Dick is from Information Service Maris in the Netherlands, and lots of different other information and data services. And he's going to tell us how to share marine data in the right way.
Which one?
I think you have to go here or here, one or two. Good. Thank
you.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me, and also I'm very happy to be here because I think Genoa is quite a thrilling city, I would say. And especially now with the ocean race and the fact that the ocean race is collecting data, and that's of course is fantastic, also in a promotional sense, in a communication sense. And so I want to thank the organization for taking this opportunity. Okay, I want to speak a little bit about how to manage your data, because you know that we talk a lot about data and we collect a lot of data, but it's also very important that we manage it well so that many people can use it in various steps of the chain, I would say. And let's start with this. It's coming or not?
Try the other one.
The other one? Okay.
Yeah,
okay. Now, first of all, you know this picture, of course. Let's say there are many ways to collect data. And also it's, yeah, let's say we collect data for many purposes. One, of course, is scientific research. That's a lot of data being collected for that purpose. But we also have the governance, and we have directives, we have global conventions, and also we have, of course, the industry, and we have the other one is, let's say, to take care of our environment. So there are many reasons why data is being collected, both by, let's call it agencies, as well as by researchers. And let's say the agencies, they work more according to structured protocols most of the time, while, let's say, researchers, of course, they try a lot of things, but also do monitoring, but also they try out a lot of new instruments, more innovation. We did an estimate a long time ago already, I think more than 10 years, as part of EMUDnet in the beginning, to get some idea about how much do we spend on collecting data in Europe. And that was done by DG Mare, giving out a survey. And that was filled in by a lot of the research institutes and by the, let's call it, the governmental departments which are dealing with the management of the sea. And from this we got a number, a ballpark number, I would say, 1.4 billion a year. And split between in situ, about 1 billion, and 0.4, let's say, for the space program, the Sentinel, etc. And of course it can be more or less, but it gives you a little bit an idea that we spend a lot of money every year to collect data. And it also means, of course, that where we have data, we also need good data management. And that's not something, sometimes people still present something like, we cannot find any data, the data is not well managed. I think that's bollocks, simply to say it loudly. Because I think over the decades we've built up quite an infrastructure in Europe. And here you see an image that was made by EuroSea already also some time ago, on the left, where you see on the bottom half, you see, let's say, all those people that operate platforms, instruments, etc., to collect data. Then we have a number of aggregators in the middle. And then on the top we have, let's say, added value services, consultancies, engineering, research. And then, let's say, we see the end users in many domains, so in the governance, but also in the industry and in the science. And if you look at those aggregators, if we focus on this, we have, first of all, here is mentioned SeaDataNet. SeaDataNet is a network, a pan-European network of national oceanographic data centers. I will go a little bit deeper on that later. But then also we have EMUDnet. EMUDnet is a very important aggregator since 12 years. And it's focusing a lot on especially using data to make generic products. And those products, they really find their way to the end users. And the interesting thing is here that the end users, they really give a lot of positive feedback about the products. But of course those products are only possible if there is science and if there is data. And that's a little bit, let's say, the tracking and tracing. While if you say to somebody, I have 100,000 CTDs, and I say a few months later, I have 200,000 CTDs, doesn't make any impression. That number, that duplication, while it could be 100 man years of work to get that done, but doesn't make an impression. But if I give them a digital bathymetry of Europe, then everybody's jumping, wow, that's the product that we needed. Why didn't anybody else did it before? And that's a little bit, let's say, the dilemma, I would say, a little bit for the data manager, that they are seen as now a little bit in the basement, while they're doing a very good job, because without their intermediation, let's say going from the data originator to get very good documented and accessible data, then others are able to do good science and also to make good products. And those scientific knowledge products, and they will find their way to the market. And that's the way, in fact, how we have to communicate. Let's say we have to make better products and also better services, of course, because we talk a lot about, say, making it easier for people to access. And we live nowadays in a connected world. That means that everybody works with the internet. We have a lot of people working with notebooks, Jupyter Hub, all these kind of things. So we must have very good services which follow standards in the IT community, but also have, let's say, very good standards in the metadata and the data that we provide, so that people can easily import and work with sets coming from different points. Okay, to come back to this picture. So what we see in this landscape, we have these three prominent infrastructures, but there are many more. Because over time in Europe, we invested in so-called research in infrastructures, the S3 program of the Commission. And that means that we have EuroArco, we have Elixir, we have ICOS, we have EMSO. So these are all research infrastructures that each of them, they run a network with many originators, and they're collecting data. But in a lot of cases, they're collecting complementary data. So there's not really a duplicative effort, but there's a lot of cooperation horizontally between these infrastructures. But everybody collects, let's say, has their own group and their own type of data and their own specialism, their own expertise to be able to validate, to document, and to process data in the right way, so that can be served for the larger user community. And what we see also is in Europe that in the last years, we are really, really pushed and I would say encouraged to work more closely together in a horizontal plane, but also, my favorite thing, also vertical, so that we, let's say, we do innovations and we create better services. And if you work together, of course, it's easier to make better services than when each of us does it by themselves. But there's always the learning curve. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. So I want to tell a little bit more about SeaDataNet. 1 minute? Okay, then I'm done. Okay, now SeaData is a network over Europe. We have now 115 data centers. It's the core are the national oceanographic data centers. And the system is not working. Oh yeah, okay. And what we built up over time, we maintain a whole network of what we call metadata directories. And they give you an overview of all the cruises, scientific cruises. They give you an overview of organizations, of data sets, etc. And everything is connected by so-called linked data principle. And there's user interfaces, and they're all machine to machine in the back, Sparkle services, to be able to use this also in our further work. And a core element is our CDI system, the Data Discovery and Access Service, in which we bring together data from 115 data centers. And right now it's more than 2.8 million data sets. So CTD profiles could be samples, could be cores, could be bathymetry surveys, etc. And this just an overview on the global scale, because it's all based upon European input, European organizations, but of course they work on a global scale. And if you look, SeaData works together with many research projects, also with GEOS and EuroGoose, let's say EuroGeos for the exchange on a global scale. We work with IODE, of course, UNESCO, also with the Ocean Data Portal. But also we work closely together with Copernicus Marine, because they need a lot of data to be able to validate their models and to make their forecast products. And we also work very closely with AMONET. And you could say SeaData is one of the pillars under AMONET in that sense, because we bring together a major part of the data that's then being used in AMONET to build products, and those products find their way to the community. I don't have to tell you anything about AMONET because it was already done previously. But very importantly is that my last 2 slides is that what also Antonio said, that we are very actively supporting people to bring their data into our systems, because if you bring your data into our systems, it means that your data has a long-term stewardship. It gets a better quality level, it's better documented, and this way it's easier to be used by others. And that means you also get more acknowledgement over time when people use your data also in scientific publications. And AMONET ingestion is set up not for the structured data providers that we already have in our networks, but especially to look for additional providers. And there are many, and that could be citizen scientists, that could also be research institutes that so far are only exchanging, let's say, maybe 2 stations, while in practice they already run 50 stations, but they never changed the MOU that they once signed. And by asking them, can you make it also public? They say, oh, no problem, because it's already public domain, so it's CC BY, so let's connect it also. And that's something that we do, especially in operational oceanography, together with AMONET Physics. So AMONET Physics ingestion, say we are 2 hands on one belly, we say a little bit. And, and we try to bring a lot of these data providers and activate them in 2 steps. The first step is then publish them as is, as soon as possible, using, for instance, AirDAP or another protocol that they have. And the next step is that we say, now we have to talk a little bit more serious business. We want better documentation. We want better quality control of your data. So let's educate you a little bit in the further standards and the procedures. And this way make your data also, on the long run, also fit for other big challenges in life, like climate change, for instance. Because if you do a sea level rise analysis, you cannot work simply with the operational data, because then already the accuracy of the operational data is as such that you get, I would say, scary scenarios. While if you do more precision, of course, that needs more time to get the outliers out, etc., then you can use that. And I can call you many more of these differences between operational use and let's call it long-term climate use or long-term scientific use. And that's why we need both these steps, that we have to go from as-is publication also to delayed mode and make it part of the other systems. Okay, the last slide. Which is in fact, let's say, the workflow, because what we do with ingestion, behind ingestion, we have a whole network of data centers, and they are capable to handle all kinds of data. And by these data centers, it will become part of those European infrastructures, and they all feed into AMONET and Copernicus. And that's in fact is the process that we do, which we have built up in Europe. And it's very successful, but of course we always want more data providers to come in that activity. Okay, thank you. Sorry for being out of time.
Thank you very much. So from data management to back into the water for ocean observing technologies, I will invite Martin Mohrmann from the Voice of the Ocean Foundation in Sweden. And you're going to tell us how to make ocean accessible to everyone. Take it away. So one of these two, right?
Okay. Yes, hello everybody. My name is Martin Mohrmann from the Voice of the Ocean Foundation. I work there as a marine Baltic researcher, and at the Voice of the Ocean Foundation we have some different sections, but the largest section that I'm actually working for is the photo knowledge section, where we collect a lot of in situ data from the ocean, focusing on the Baltic Sea. I put these 3 keywords, persistence, resolution, and accessibility here, that are very important to us. And with Voto, we run these couple of ocean observatories in the Baltic Sea. Those are points where we continuously collect data in the water. I will talk more about that in a second. We also provide research infrastructure to external projects or researchers that can apply to us. So we basically support their projects, and we work as closely as possible with a wider scientific community to exchange, to develop the best methods, the best practices, and to also improve constantly with the techniques that we use, with the sensors and so on. So I'll fill these bullet points with some life, starting with the infrastructure by giving you some examples. We have 3 small research vessels that are stationed in Göteborg, Karlskrona, and Stockholm respectively. And 2 of them are equipped with full lab and a suite of sensors. So we can in place calibrate our sensors, also take water samples from the full column depth of the ocean. And we also run a lot of autonomous ocean observing robots. And I basically, from the ocean knowledge perspective, I often see the vessels mostly as tools to get our robots at sea, because we have quite a family of these autonomous robots. And you can see here a couple of them on the upper left. They are the Sea Explorer gliders, and I go more into detail in a second. Then we also have the Sailboys. They are solar and wind-powered ocean robots that can stay at sea for a very long time and collect atmospheric data and data from just below the surface. Then the mini AUV, very cool thing that you can just carry under your arm and deploy, but it has a short battery runtime and a bottom-moored ADCP. But yeah, our main workhorses are really the Sea Explorer gliders. And they are able to stay out at sea in the Baltic Sea for about a month or so after deployment, and then they collect data all the way from the surface to the sea bottom, making one dive about every 15 minutes. So we get a lot of data that way. They take relatively little maintenance. It's not at all a full-time job to steer the glider. We just check in every couple of hours if they're still collecting all the data, and they have a set of standard sensors for measuring important parameters such as the temperature, salinity, or the oxygen in the water, but also often we equip them with more specialized sensors. For example, often it's chlorophyll A or the currents, or recently we had a methane sensor after the Nord Stream events. Many different parameters there. So, as mentioned, we run different ocean observatories where we try to, or we do keep always at least one glider at these positions in the water. So that we have long data sets. We plan to have these data sets in these locations in the Skagerrak, Kattegat, the Bornholm Basin, and the northeastern Bornholm Basin for at least decadal timescales. For one, to observe processes that happen on rather long timescales. For example, think about global warming, but also to observe processes that are very important for the Baltic Sea, but that happen only occasionally. For example, major Baltic inflows where a lot of fresh oxygenated water comes into the Baltic Sea, or marine heat waves, or the pipeline sabotage that we observed. So we prospectively want to expand these observatories to 5 observatories. And yeah, here are some statistics about the data that we already collected. So it's about 270,000 profiles with a distance travel that is more than around the Earth. We cannot compete to ocean rays because these things are very slow, but we have a lot of data and we have the full depth resolution, so that's fantastic. Of course, we don't stop. The data collection doesn't stop with the collection, but we also have to focus on the data processing, on the quality control. So that is one of the focus areas that we have for this year, that we have improved delayed mode quality control. And as we heard from Taco earlier, we really try to not reinvent the wheel, but using well-established tools, for example, contributing to glider tools, PyGlider, or pre-existing standards to drive this forward, and because it's just the right thing to do to share the knowledge. Speaking of which, of course, we share a lot, the methods, but also the data. All the data is freely available. There's a near real-time data mode. We've been setting up a flexible data server with the help of EMODnet, where all the data is available. You see the URL here on the top left. So that should be fairly easy to get started. We also provide all the scripts to get you started. If that should be easy, and if it's not, complain to me. We are always willing to help. At times, we also give workshops where we just show how to get started and so on. And maybe more importantly, we provide infrastructure support to external projects. So if you're a marine researcher or if you have some interesting project, you can suggest where to put a special sensor, where to put a glider. And yeah, the application period is open right now. I give you the link at the bottom. So you can go there and apply if you want. It's for free if you get accepted. So there are some very, very interesting projects. For example, the Olamur project that was presented earlier, I believe, where it's about growing kelp and mussel farming in the middle of a wind power park. So I think I should come to an end. This is also the last slide. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thanks very much. I will be transferring those to the next speaker. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Stefan Raymond to join us from the Ocean Race Science Program. Many of you maybe know what it is, or maybe some of you don't, but it's very exciting to hear how you are working with scientists to collect data from remote areas of the globe.
Thank you. So I want to extend my topic from yesterday and focus today more about technical issues around sailing and science. So when we look at different observation platforms, you can see that our contribution is a small piece of the puzzle, but since we operate in very remote areas, this piece can be quite important. So what are our added values? So we measure CO2 neutral, what is quite interesting in nowadays. As I mentioned, we operate in remote areas, especially in the Southern Ocean. We circumnavigate the globe and also we operate in coastal areas. So we can provide both coastal areas where it's difficult for especially large research vessels to operate, and also in very remote areas. And we can make the work of our scientific partners visible, and also our program is a nice tool for ocean literacy. Here on the slide, a short history of the development of the science equipment on board. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. We started with an instrument known as a ferry box, but as you might know, the ferry box is quite large and bulky, has the size of a fridge, sometimes even double. And the question was how to implement this on a sailboat. So development started in 2009. First prototypes were tested on different sailboats, larger but also very small ones. And 2017 we convinced the Volvo Oceanways to deploy those instruments. And I say we because I was at this time part of the company which developed those instruments, and it was a great success that the Oceanways, formerly the Volvo Oceanways, accepted our offer and takes the instruments. From then on, we further developed the instrument and we deployed it on IMOCA boats. First boat was Malizia. Then you see here a very interesting research vessel, the Eugen Seibold, operated by the Max Planck Institute, also fully sailing vessel with a much larger ocean pack on board. And what you can also see from this slide here is that these instruments can be deployed on many different sailing platforms. Nowadays, even we tried it on multi-70s, that's large trimarans, which sailing very fast with speeds above 40 knots and more. So just a short reminder what we did during the last edition of the Oceanways. So we used available sensors on board, meteorological stations to measure barometric pressure. Then we equipped 2 boats with the ocean pack, 2 boats with the microplastic samplers. We deployed drifters and Argos, and we had an automated microscope on board one of the boats. What are the requirements on a sailing vessel, especially on fast sailing vessels? The first thing is those instruments must be ready for great mechanical stress. So we talk about acceleration, shocks, and so on. It's really complicated to have an instrument which is able to survive in those conditions. Then it must be as small as possible. It should be lightweight. Next point is very important. It should be very easy to operate. So there are no experts on board, and the sailors have other things to do, so this instrument must be as easy as possible to use. Also, our instruments we deployed are not citizen science instruments, so they're no low cost. They are fully, let's say, state-of-the-art sensors inside. Autonomy is a great point. So the instrument is much easier to have it on board when it works autonomous. And power consumption is one of the most important points. So here we use 30 watts, what is about 10% of the power production of the boat. So on the right-hand side, I put some possible observations, and starting on top with the more easier options and going down to the more complicated options. So as mentioned, boats are typically equipped already with meteorological sensors. So it is quite easy. We just need to forward or to forward those data. The next thing is grayed out, because this is possible on smaller sailing vessels, but not on racing boats. So we cannot stop and use a handheld instrument. One option could be in the future using of XPTs. Then drifters have been deployed. So this is a quite tested method, and even Argos. So here we need to slow down a little bit the boat, but especially when you do it in the tropics, the boat is slow anyway, so you can drop this Argo floats there. Then getting more complicated, the next step would be to have an instrument measuring physical parameters like sea surface temperature or salinity. Here what is needed is a clean water supply and also in debubbler to get rid of small gas bubbles. The next step would be looking for chemical parameters like CO2. So those instruments are quite sensitive, so you need to have a robust instrument, and also you need to think about data quality, and this can be done by using small ref gas bottles. Another step would be to look for microplastics. Here you need to think about a system, you need to think about those filters need to be changed manually every day, and you should consider contamination, possible contamination, by changing the filters. And the most complicated parameter, I would say, is our biological parameters. So we cannot use any fridge on board, we cannot use chemical fixations, so optical measurements would be possible, but as you know, when you try to make a picture with your phone on a driving car, it's complicated, and on a sailboat it's even much more complicated. So here some technical details about the instrument we used on board. That's the so-called ocean pack. It's a carbon frame. On the left-hand side you see the gas bottle, which provides calibration, automatic calibrations for the CO2 analyzer. The instrument itself has a weight of about 16 kilos. Then you have the gas bottle, you have the water content, you have possibly add-ons to the system, so you come up with 20 kilos, what is incredibly lightweight. So power consumption is 1.2 amps at 24 volts, meaning 30 watts more or less. And on our boats, or America boats, this is possible. On some smaller boats, this might be a challenge. So here, a closer look on how it looks like. We have here a filter where large particles are filtered out, water, self-priming water pump, then a debubbling device with sensors inside, and then the large box on the right is the CO2 analyzer and the data logger. Here you see our approach to guarantee telemetry. So we collect data with the instruments. Data are stored on board, but can also be passed through satellite communication to our base in Spain. And from our server in Spain, we can provide data to our science partners. So how can, what can be the future? We can think about further developing our instruments. We already did in the past, in this edition, introducing eDNA sampling and sampling of trace elements. So we have results very soon ready for these new approaches. In the future, I could imagine to look for nutrients. Also, macroplastic could be an interesting topic. And a very hot topic for us is the avoidance of the collisions with floating objects. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We will have just a short Q&A after, but if you have more questions, Stefan will be here for lunch, I hope, to answer them, because it's really very interesting. And now we will have a last speaker of our session before the lunch, Anahita Lavrak from Ocean Sail, who will present about innovative micro vessels collecting ocean data using wind and solar energy in remote parts of the ocean. Here you go. Please, thank you.
Cool. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Anahita from Ocean. We're making autonomous wind and solar powered micro vessels that collect ocean data. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you 3 things: who we are, what we're aiming to do, and then finally what I'd like to learn from everyone here. So start with who we are. So we're an early stage startup. We've been around, I've been working on the technology for 2 years now. My co-founder and I started off working on it at Imperial College London, and we've been a company for about a year now. And I studied aeronautical engineering, and whilst I was at university, I came across something called the Micro Transat Challenge, which is a challenge for autonomous sailboats across the Atlantic Ocean. So a little bit more on that. There are 3 key things that make the Atlantic crossing so difficult, or the Micro Transat so difficult. Number 1, the sailboats have to be less than 2 meters in length. Essentially, that's a power limit because it limits the amount of solar panels you can put on top. Number 2, they have to be fully autonomous. Once you cross that start line, you can't send a single signal to your little vessels. That means if they head into a storm, if they crash into a vessel, if they get lost because of a rogue current, you can't do anything. They have to figure that out all by themselves. And the final thing, crossing 4,000 miles is not enough. They have to get within a 25-mile finish line. So the navigation systems and position is really, really important. And people have tried this challenge every year. No one has managed it successfully yet, which is crazy. There is one notable achievement that's worth saying, though. A sail boy has actually managed the unmanned crossing, which is a super cool achievement. So they did 1 and 3, which is really hard in itself, but the fully autonomous crossing is still out there for the grabs. Now, the reason a lot of these attempts have failed is due to lack of accurate navigation systems. So my master's thesis was on designing an accurate navigation system for these autonomous micro-vessels. Unfortunately, a navigation algorithm output is only as good as the inputs, and the inputs here were ocean data, specifically winds and currents. So I started, as a complete novice, the aerospace engineering, going and looking at where can I find ocean data? Where do I find good ocean winds in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? And there's a whole other debate to be had here, but the broad message was that I was struggling to find kind of the ideal data in the middle of the Atlantic, and I started looking into where does that live data in the middle of the Atlantic actually come from? I designed this talk for a more general audience, so I'll skip all the part where I explain what a drifting buoy is. I think you guys already know that. But essentially, to me, it seemed crazy that a lot of our data in the middle of the Atlantic is collected by chartering a ship or negotiating a vessel of opportunity, going to the Atlantic, throwing a ball of plastic overboard. A few months later, it's moved away from where you would like it to be. So a year later, you have to do it all over again. And I think this fantastic visualization, which shows monthly drifter tracks, I think represents it really well. It's way, way better than nothing, but it's not giving very good uniform spatial coverage. And Ocean initially came around essentially saying, why don't we take the initial concept of the drifting buoy, take really small, really simple, really robust, and then just give it some actuation through wind and solar power, so you can actually get something that sails to the area of location and stays in position or keeps the track instead of, it provides a bit more uniform coverage, and that's how Ocean came about. Something I should probably say, so obviously we're not the only people making autonomous vessels out there. So sail buoys are out there. We're about half the size, so you can basically, I can pick one of them up and chuck it, so anyone else probably can as well. And additionally, we have a rigid wing sail that can have any angle. It's closer to a normal sailboat, so navigation-wise, it's much more capable. And then you've also got the much bigger vessels out there as well, but these are, large, clunky, expensive assets. They're very good for bathymetry, but if you want ocean currents, one really good data point is not enough. You want 50 of them. So a good way to summarize it is if sail drone are doing something like any sensor, anytime, anywhere, we are a limited range of sensors, but we want to be all the time and everywhere. So that's what we want to do. So far, we've got a working prototype. It's doing small autonomous hops, and we've tested it up to a 4.6, and we've just started collecting data. Our next step on the data is validation. So we want to sail our boats next to a moored buoy operated by the Met Office, so we can compare our data to, hopefully a very good standard and make sure that we're of the right quality and it's validated properly. On the commercial side, so we've been quite fortunate. We've got a grant from ESA, and we're doing a project with the UK government looking at using our vessels for biodiversity. We've also been very fortunate in getting a lot of good media coverage, and this goes to what someone was saying earlier, in that ocean literacy and understanding that the oceans are important is crazy. I'm a really big sailor. I've sailed in offshore races in the North Sea, Baltic Sea, Irish Sea, And until 2 years ago, I didn't know how important our oceans were. Like, it's crazy. So I think a really big thing that we're keen on as well is any opportunity to shout on BBC or at any general public thing about the oceans, like, take it, do it. In the future, in next year, we would like to work with research institutions, trialing our microvessels out. So, you know, we're looking at missions where a large ASV would just be a bit too much, too expensive, too impractical, but a drifter is like, you know, if you want to be near a coastal area or you don't want to deploy loads of things that move away, like, we'd be really, really interested in doing small pilot projects. So if you've got any in mind, like, talk to us, please. But the long-term thing that we're most excited about is improving weather forecasting. So, like, at least from sailing, I understood at least that weather forecasts are pretty changeable and it's hard to predict things in the future. But I would like to use our microvessels and deploy them in areas where, you know, that are under-observed. So that's near coastal areas and also really remote parts of the ocean, places where the ocean rates boats are going, you know, and that's our long-term vision. And yeah, this is a good way to illustrate it. So this is, you know, the status quo, and that was with 100 drifters. This is what I think we could do if we had 25 of our microvessels. That's the kind of track that they could do in a month. So that's our vision. That's what we would really, really like to do. However, you know, as you can probably tell, I'm a bit too young to have had a distinguished career in ocean observation, and therefore there is a lot that I would like to learn from the people in this audience, essentially. So if you're remotely interested in what we're doing and you would like to give us advice, we don't want to be the sort of startup that, like, builds a product and then says, here, why isn't anyone using it? Like, we want to talk to people and figure out what is actually the most useful. You know, do you want something that's in the coast? Do you care more about the Southern Ocean? Where do you want us to go? So there's some kind of prompt questions on there about things we're most interested in learning from and learning about from you guys. And yeah, if anyone is interested in giving advice, come talk to me afterwards. I'm here for the next 2 days. If you do need to run, if you just type that in as well, there's an option to just enter your email, and I'll get in touch with you through there. Because yeah, ideally I want to talk to as many people as possible and learn as much as I can now. So yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot. Fantastic. We have a lot to discuss during lunch, but we have 5 minutes, 6 minutes left for an interaction right now. So if you have questions to our speakers, maybe I will invite you back on stage. And Vega, if you are still with us, please be online. So we have Dick, Martin, Stefan, Anita, and maybe Vega as well. Are there any questions? Please, go ahead, Simona.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this nice presentation, very interesting. And I have a question for Stefan. Have you ever thought of monitoring also in the harbors? I mean, you are, you know, going worldwide, but it's true that the open ocean, the ocean is requires a lot of observation, but also now we need to know more on the pollutants and the status of the water quality in the harbors. And another issue, I think it's also to bring these systems to, let's say, normal sailing boats and, you know, spread and get more data from society. And the last point is, have you ever thought of monitor how much a boat is polluting? How much, you know, the vessels or the people sailing is polluting the ocean? And what can we do? This is also linked to the harbor water quality. What can we do to reduce the impact of people sailing in the water? I know that there's a lot of questions, sorry, in one.
Yeah, let's start with technically we could measure also in the port. It's especially true here in these waters which are quite clean, but the issue is biofouling. So when you run the instrument in the port, then you have quickly build up bacteria inside, and it's
too much work to clean. So typically I ask the sailors to stop the instrument a couple of nautical miles before they coming in port. But technically it's not a problem at all to measure in port. Second question I forgot already was...
How can you spread this technology, the observing sets to other sailing boats and communities?
Yeah, then I would like to refer to a project from my colleague Torsten Tanur called SOUP. Someone knows it? What it's called? SOUP? Do you know? Yeah. So he tries exactly this. So I will bring you in contact with him. That's exactly this idea to have instruments maybe a little bit less costly than what we use here on board. Carbon fiber is not needed on a regular sailboat, and to skip instruments, meaning operating the instruments for a couple of weeks on one boat and then moving it to another one. It's also possible. But I think what you save in money by having a more cost-effective instrument, you spend more in data control. So the question is, does it make sense in the end? But I recommend to talk to Torsten. And the last one is sustainability across sailing. It's a big issue. My colleague Megan can answer you with exact numbers, what we did in the past. But what I would say is, when you compare the last edition of the Volvo Ocean Race with the VO65s with this edition, the most important factor is that we use boats which are sailing all the time, not only every 4 years. So we are much more sustainable because the boats are in use much longer. But in the end, creating a carbon fiber boat is really energy intensive. So there is a serious impact for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, I have a question. Okay, yes, Francisco, please go ahead.
It's also to Stefan. I am very curious to the monitoring, and I would like to know what is the opinion of the sponsors and the community itself. I mean, like, they see that you are doing monitoring as a valuable asset. It's something that you do, but it's okay, and maybe not everyone knows. I mean, I would like to know what is the feedback from the sailing community, and how much is more or less the investment that you have to do and
Let's answer like this. So 2017, when I convinced the Volvo Ocean Race to have the instruments on boards, there was really big pushback from the sailing community. They didn't want to have, at this time was 45 kilos, the instrument. They didn't want to have this weight on board. They didn't want to have additionally power consumption. And this was really hard to be accepted by the community. But then, as soon as we get first data, the sailing teams realized that they get a lot of media attention, and this you can calculate back in sponsorships. So then people from EMOGA class learned about this and understood immediately the potential of having a science program with them. So you require more sponsors, and in the end you win. So science wins because we get data, and the sailors win because they get some more sponsors. So it's now much easier. So we have now every boat or all boats equipped with science equipment, and before it was a big fight to have one instrument.
And what about for the Voice of the Ocean and Ocean Sail? How do you go about it? Getting, more attention, more sponsorship? Are you not crossing somebody else's other sailing routes when you're doing your observations?
When it comes to us raising profile, like especially with the Atlantic crossing, I think that and going after a world first, I think having a nice story of like, look, Christopher Columbus did it 500 years ago, why can't we get a robot to do the same thing? Like, I think having a good story that the general public can resonate with without needing to educate them at like a huge amount for them to start being interested. I think that's quite important for raising profile. But apart from that, we're still working on it, so yeah.
Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, I do agree that the outreach is quite important, and I was briefly mentioning that VOTO also have kind of different branches, and we do have like an education and an history of the sea branch. So I think that it's very important to also reach the people in other ways that is not only scientific publications that can help.
Okay, great. Anything else from the audience? Any other questions? No? Okay, so I propose we close for lunch because it's time. Let's speak about how we can join forces to promote what we do better, get ideas, and maybe discuss them in the last part of the meeting. We are coming back at 2 o'clock sharp, and we will be listening about high-value marine data sets, the study of the ocean climate, and various economic uses of the ocean. So we are here with you at 2 o'clock. Bon appétit.